All right, welcome to Practical Ideas for Growth. I'm Sarah Dobeck. I'm here today with Allan Koltin. Welcome, Allan.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here and to be having this conversation. Our world has changed a lot, and accounting and advisory firms and their professionals have had to adapt a lot over the last year and a half to meet the evolving demands on the profession. And so today's conversation really is about what we're anticipating coming out of this. What are some of our predictions? And I have a feeling our audience knows who you are, but just for kicks and giggles, can you give a little bit about who you are and your background in case someone's listening that has not heard or met you before?
Thanks, Sarah. And I just got to say, I knew Sarah when, and what I mean by when is when she was starting in this profession, and just to see how you have emerged as a star, and just your abilities and skills and all the wonderful things I hear about you from clients. It just puts a big smile on my face. I think back to when we worked together, and I know that's been over 10 years ago, but you have set the world on fire, and congratulations to you.
Thank you. And thank you for taking a chance on me way back when. I appreciate it. I wouldn't be here today without that.
The other three people we made offers to, all declined. So, no, just kidding. Just kidding.
Last resort. So, you got lucky.
So I consult primarily in the accounting firm space, although I do branch out to law firms and private equity and other professional financial service firms. It's the things involving strategy, governance, leadership, profitability, human capital, succession, M&A, and then, as I lovingly just call it, partner conflict. When we can't agree on something, usually I get to be, I don't know if it's called the mediator, the facilitator, or sometimes the arbitrator, but it helps sometimes to have someone from the outside come in and share best practices, as well as sometimes take awkward discussions that sometimes when two parties have, just like in a marriage, it can go sideways quickly, and to try to keep everybody focused on the goal. Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you for that background. Like I said, I'm super excited about our topic. Maybe to kick us off, what are some of the challenges or changes, I guess I would say, that you've seen firms make in this past year and a half as they've navigated through the pandemic? And conversely to that, what do you hope will stick from some of that?
I think safe to say there were a couple things at play. One is not all, but most firms are coming off record years. And, I can't say 10 for 10, but 9 out of 10 that I talked to, revenue was either equal to the year before or well in excess. For sure, profitability was greater. And many firms, I hate to use this expression, but they're fat, dumb, and happy. And they're living it again in 2021. And I tried to share with them that you can't forget the challenges and things that were potential threats that won't go away. And eventually we're going to have to go back to some of the old ways of doing things. So kudos to those firms that had record years, got PPP dollars forgiven. You couldn't have hit 2020 will go down as ironically maybe the most profitable year we ever had. That being said, clearly the emergence of remote work anytime, anywhere is now full swing. And it's interesting watching how for every 3 firms you talk to, there's 3 unique perspectives. One is the hard line, June 1 or July 1 or Labor Day, get everybody back in the office. The party's over. And there's really firms that feel that way. There's another group that would say, you know what, it has changed. 10% are going to be back, 10% are never coming back, and 80% are looking at something like 3 days in, 3 days out, or something like that. And then there's a third group that says, you know what, the world is flat. We are now a virtual firm, and we have to get on the offensive, but we have to play on the defensive. What would be an example of playing on the defensive? And it hasn't hit everywhere, but I'm watching this phenomenon of big New York, big California, big city firms, not necessarily big firms, recruiting into the Midwest, as an example. That was my morning today. One particular firm has lost 10 people. And what they're saying is, hey, you're making 90,000 where you're at. Your firm is giving you a hard time about coming back. Well, guess what? We welcome the remotes of the world. Oh, and we're going to pay you 125,000 because in San Francisco or New York, that's what we pay our people. We could care less where you are. And then in that same breath, I get a call from a partner saying, don't you think we should move to two pay scales, a higher one for those that are in the office and a lower one for those that are out of the office? And sometimes you just got to bite your tongue.
Oh, wrong thinking, wrong thinking. Yeah, I do. You know what? I had a lot of those same conversations in the last week. And, even one conversation with a firm about how do you calculate that, right? And, there's the former thinking on that. That was, a multiple, right? But most of that's market today. And the market isn't just your local geography. To your point, I think remote is such a big factor. I think that's going to be one of the things that firms are really challenged with is how do we set those pay scales? As a virtual company, we've struggled with that over the years of having to evolve our thinking around compensation and what that looks like. And we've got people all over the US, and that's exactly what the profile of an accounting firm is going to look like. I think there are firms, we're starting to see it. They're absolutely, staff is moving, and we're seeing people apply on both sides, those that are clear that want to be remote and want that opportunity or want that flexibility. And remote, I will say, doesn't mean 100% remote all the time. You can have people in the office and require that. But I also see people that say they want to be in an office, and there's people, that'll be on the other side of that say, I want the option. And so that announcement that KPMG made, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago in the UK about this hybrid model, this permanent hybrid model, is really interesting. And I think we're going to see a lot of firms in the US that move to something similar, or their version of what works for their business.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we have to define for a remote individual, what are the criteria that make up that person? They have to be a self-starter. They have to be mature. They have to be able to get to answer sometimes very efficiently without the framework of being around a group of people. My guess is leaders, business getters, client relationship people, those are got to be sort of in person. But heck, if it's a highly technical person who wants to deliver X billable hours a year, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. We talk about in the office. We have people that come into their office, they close the door. If they have a question for the person sitting on the left, they text them. If they have a question for the one on the right, they email them. They don't talk to any human beings. So we've got to get this bricks and mortar out of our head. But Sarah, if I could, it goes the other way then. Why be in the office? What are the things we would lose, and what are the things that the office of the future creates? And we've talked about this: collaboration, people together, thinking, innovation together, coaching, mentoring, training, all these kinds of things, planning, are activities that are better in a face-to-face group setting. So
absolutely. And it's interesting, you're talking about, kind of what are some of these things that are going to stick from COVID, but what can we move on from? What do you think that we won't go back to, which is the common phrase everybody keeps referring to? Like, I want to go back to something, even though we're in this whole new world and creating it. But what do you think we can move on from that we don't need to go back to?
Yeah, I mean, I worry about that because I worry about the younger generation and building relationships. When, for example, let's use conferences as an example. Both me and you know that we've met a lot of clients and friends and relationships through those and the breakfasts and lunches and dinners that followed. And I worry about the young ones today in a remote world. I see it with internship programs. My son is going through that now, and you really don't get into the culture of the organization. You really don't build those kind of relationships. So it's new strategies of how they're going to do it if, in fact, they are remote. I think marketing, I mean, you talk about doing a complete 180. I think about marketing budgets pre-pandemic and where we spent our time and how we had to pivot. And all of a sudden, thought leadership and webinar became the number one, marketing strategy of choice. And boy, did it take off. it took off to a point where marketing groups are saying to their industry partners or service line leaders, come up with a deck, a slide deck. We'll coordinate everything else. You just get on and you talk about something that's real thought leadership. And we'll take care of getting it out, not just to clients, but to prospects and referral sources. Whole new way of thinking.
I couldn't agree more. Our survey showed that huge increase in digital that happened, and not only from an investment standpoint on the budget side, but from a results standpoint. It was driving a significant amount of leads and opportunities for firms. And so I do think one of the things that firms will hopefully move on from is in-person, ineffective networking for the sake of networking, to say that we are doing business development or we're doing growth when it wasn't really producing results. And I think that the pandemic probably showed them that some of those things weren't, even though they're the comfortable things that we know how to do. And so hopefully it presents a lot of firms an opportunity to reevaluate being just as effective with their time, hopefully spending a little bit less on some of these things and getting better results from their efforts. What, as a firms emerge from this pandemic, we talked a lot about the remote. That's obviously one area where we think firms are going to have to be to stay competitive. But what are some of the other things that you think firms are going to have to do in order to remain competitive in this new environment?
Well, I think we got a taste of it. I think we, with the CARES Act and things like that, I think in a non-threatening way, we learned that literally overnight, we can learn a new expertise and we can go out and package it and deliver it to clients. And we saw the kind of feedback clients gave us. They were raving fans. And they said, you saved my company. You got me dollars I don't know we would have gotten. You then helped me to forgive those dollars. You were there for me when we talked about cash flow, when we talked about potential layoffs, when we talked about really tough stuff. And I would tell you the awakening, I think, for many practitioners was shame on us. We had been too busy being busy in the forest, grinding billable dollars. And we forgot there were real live human beings on the other side. We got this dosage of intimacy with them. And don't go back to your bad habits. Find others, look at the work you do. I always say this, you got 1,200 billable hours. A third of it is brain and heart surgery. Keep doing that. A third of it, we could have a friendly debate whether you should do it or someone else. But there's that bottom third, and we call it robbing from the cradle. There's someone else that can do that work. Use this as a time to figure out how to be this impact player that you were over the last year and a half. Don't migrate back. And you've heard me say this before. We all talk about the standard being to be the trusted advisor. Forget about that. That's like saying we're a quality firm. Have you ever met a non-quality firm? The new standard is to be the most valuable player, to be the impact player to our client, that no matter what, they never leave us. So I like what has happened in 2021. I also, for all the discussion about loss of culture, I think some have used this opportunity, just like we're talking now, to learn more about their people and build better relationships along the way. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's actually going to be a challenge coming out of this year to replace those dollars, right? And it's good, but determining how you continue to be that most valuable player and be in that advisory consultative role, and it's great, but you and I both know those dollars have to be replaced each year. Not all of them are reoccurring, and it's definitely a different mindset and has to be a lot more intentional. And we're, we saw a great start, and it will be interesting to see what firms can keep up with it, because it's going to require more than just responding, which a lot of firms did a great job responding. Some did not respond at all to the market conditions in the last year. Those ones are going to struggle the most. But, I think a lot of firms have a question that maybe struggle to be more responsive than they wanted to be. Is it too late to get adapted to this game? What do you think about that, Allan?
No. I mean, you can, there's still hope. you really can put that light switch on and make that happen. I mean, firms have to understand, and I don't want to call it the invasion of the bots or machine learning or whatever, but compliance as a service is going to continue to evaporate. And we all talk about audits. Well, guess what? There's no regulatory bodies in the tax side. It's going to happen even faster in tax. So when tax partners complain that they have so much work and they're not doing the planning anymore because there's stuff in the compliance, I said, my God, it's a brave new world. You can recruit people anywhere around the country to do that compliance work. They don't have to be in your office anymore. So be proactive, have a strategy. Size of firm no longer matters. It's a borderless opportunity.
It
And
is.
yeah, so it should be an exciting time. And hey, maybe we missed the boat last year or a little bit of this year because we were so busy grinding and billing and handling the overflow of compliance work. Let's take a step back. Let's get Sarah or Allan in there for a retreat and talk about our firm of the future.
Absolutely. So we've got about a minute left, and so I thought I'd close our conversation today. Maybe we can share a prediction for post-pandemic life. So if you just share one or two predictions, what would those be?
Well, the one that I don't like to share because sometimes it comes off the wrong way, but our profession is quickly moving to the haves and the have-nots. The haves are the ones that are highly profitable, using technology as the great enabler, investing heavily current profits back into recruiting, retaining, growing talent, and really creating a legacy organization and providing products and services that deliver value that you can then price it based on value. And there's another group at the other side of the ledger just continuing to plod and milk it. And those are the ones I worry about are going to end up as the have-nots. The fourth industrial revolution is here, whether we want to accept it or not. Embrace it or put your head in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And mine actually is similar. And I think there's going to be a huge widening of the gap and a huge consolidation that we're going to continue to see. I also believe that we have a big shift in movement of clients. We're starting to see a trickling effect, just like with employees. But I do believe that we're going to see a lot of clients who are picking their heads up and going, I either got a lot of great help and maybe I went to a firm that helped me with my PPP loan or ERC because my current firm couldn't do it, and they're going to question that. And there's others that are going to go, wait a second, I barely made it through the last year and a half. I really could have used a lot more guidance and my firm wasn't doing much. And they're going to be jumping ship. And I think we're going to see a huge shifting of client base and a lot of opportunity for firms that are well positioned, that did a good job through this pandemic. And then the firms that weren't are going to be struggling quite a bit.
Right on, sister.
All right. Allan, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a fantastic conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. Take care.
All right.